So before we dive into the use of AI, there's always a question of why for us, right? So why are we interested in the technology? Why are we interested in using it? And what problems we're looking to solve? I think a year ago or 2 years ago, it was I was going to say shit, but you can't say that publicly again. Bad start. So it was this thing that came in, right, that have impacted our world. And I now think we've evolved into a place where we're really starting to understand how we harness it to drive our industry forward. One of the things I think for us that is really massively useful for is a tool to help us drive engagement through personalization and hyper-personalization, which we'll get into the depths and details what we mean by that. A lot of the time though, people say, but why is engagement important? Is it just a vanity metric that means nothing? And what we would say is, what we see in our platform and our data is it's a consistent data point that comes through. And that data point is that the type of learners that go to the platform frequently, like 2-3 times a week as a part, perform better in their KPIs than people that don't. Obviously, again, when we're looking at learning as a more holistic learning, a 70-20-10 style learning or 5 moments of need learning, so the people that are accessing learning in that more holistic part, where they're going to the platform to find a way to solve a problem, or they're going to the platform to stay up to date on the latest stuff in their job, as well as that formal kind of career path training, the people that adopt all those methods of learning and therefore are going to a platform multiple times per week, the data tells us that quadrant of people, that quarter of people perform significantly better in pretty much every KPI. Whether that's a sales KPI, a customer satisfaction KPI, you can pretty much do the correlation, put all the learners into those quadrants and see this is the thing we want to aim for. And we have a whole bunch of case studies that points to that, which is why in many of our clients, they've still got that slide? I've missed a slide, bummer. Which is why I think from our side, we're trying to drive engagement from where people come to us and are low engaged, high to correlated business value, to high engagement, and we prove the correlation. And I think with AI, what we're really super excited about is the ability now to supercharge personalization to accelerate some of this and solve many of the problems, like translation from being one, around curation, skills curation being another, and a whole bunch of others from content modality. Thanks for that part towards that. So a whole range of things that we can now accelerate the problems and the barriers we had to allow for personalization to happen and to remove that barrier that stopped many people from wanting to learn. And I want to hit on that, right, as the barriers. What are the barriers that AI is allowing us to block down that we can now open up again? Because some of these issues were issues out in the corner somewhere that we locked away in a box because we couldn't solve them. What technology and AI now is doing is allowing us with creative thinking and the technology to break down and solve these problems. So from aspects of neurodiversity, which we'll come to, from language, which we mentioned, from different moments of need, depending on what my job's doing, from technology barriers to preferences to a whole suite of other things. If I hit on the first one first, actually before I do that, let's just ask a general question, right, before we dig in deeper. When you guys go to learn something outside of your work, where do you go? Just curious what we get. Where's that? ChatGPT? ChatGPT is, oh wow, okay, that's two out of two. 100% ChatGPT, is the bar going to change at all, or where's that? And Copilot as well? Gemini, is anything, wow, just Gemini these days? Google? YouTube? Anyone got TikTok? Tends to be a generational thing, right? But generationally, we do hear TikTok, let's say, of a generation apart. Even what we hear sometimes on that Generation Z is they're searching on TikTok for a 30-second video rather than going to Google or ChatGPT. So generationally, there's also preferences that have been wired in there as well. But yeah, good to hit. If you asked that question a year ago or 2 years ago, we probably would have got a very different answer towards that. So if we then go into look at it from a neurodiversity perspective, and let's maybe take this as an example, right? So for those that know me, I'm neurodiverse, I'm ADHD. Normally I play it really down with a kind of like low energy type stuff towards it. But if you look from a neurodiversity perspective and take a friend of mine who runs a charity who's autistic, and how do we prefer to learn from a learning modality preferences perspective? So as an ADHD person, I hate a SCORM course, hate it. It's the antithesis that makes my brain crawl. A structured logical sequence that someone preordains is the worst possible way to learn. And we are probably anything between 5 and 15% of the population. So people that give us that structure and do it, we hate it. What we love is giving us freedom to give our dopamine hit. To get our dopamine hit, which is an ADHD thing, we want to learn by interest. So we want to prioritize learning by the things that's most interesting. A friend of mine who's autistic, completely opposite. She wants structure. She wants, I need to know what to do and what I do next. Give me this part, and she's going to hate it. So 2 different learning interfaces UX for 2 different types of neurodiversity. From a modality perspective, I love bite-sized videos. In fact, I like bite-sized videos so much, I created a platform that's dedicated to bite-sized videos, thinking that's what the world wanted, but then worked out that maybe that's what I'm projecting into the world. If I look at what I've done for kids, that we have a YouTube channel with 1,000 videos, 10 million kids learning from it a year, but again, I'm projecting out my style of learning. Which is not that different, right? If you ask George Lucas, who do you make movies for? It's for himself. You ask Stan Lee, who makes comics for? Themselves. What we need to now probably do is recognize we shouldn't just be creating our content and our experiences for ourselves, but we want to think about all the diversities. In the world of media, though, a lot of that was stopped. Research was probably stopped on the whole VAK type stuff, which everyone said, you can't talk about it. But again, from a neurodiversity perspective, as an ADHD person, I want it short, I want it multi-visual, you need to keep my attention span, so visual, auditory, so forth is great for me. For Ritu, my friend who's autistic, complete opposite. Short, punchy, text-based, and just to the bullet points. For me, she wants the facts, I want a story. So if we're really going to engage in learning, we're just using these 2 examples to show not every brain is wired the same, we are different, and we need to, now that we can solve the problem differences, we can run at this problem. I think if you take it even a stage further, and even look at types of ADHD, such as those that have auditory processing difficulties, in that type of individual, the audio and the visual is really hard. I mean, like most of us, I can't remember a song to sing. Neither can my wife or my kids. It's a very hyper household we have. So, so 3 kids, 5 adults in a house, that just vibrates. Luckily, actually, my neighbor is deaf. Otherwise, I think probably we would have been evicted. But to the point, auditory processing is an issue, right? We can't remember any song. So actually, for some people, learning in that auditory way versus a dyslexic person, getting them to read 40 pages is going to be a nightmare. So these problems beforehand were really hard to solve. Now what we're finding is we're able to solve these problems because we use technology to solve the unsolvable. And that's exciting. Make sure I missed anything. And population-wise, 15% is neurodiverse. That's diagnosed. Realistically, it's probably 30%. And in frontline workers, it's definitely closer to 30%. And that's just using neurodiverse to open up our mind to the conversation that preferences is a thing. Preferences in a day is thing. Sometimes, I mean, I read a 500-page book on the human mind. At the end of the book, the professor says, in my 6-part mini-series in the BBC, which I then nearly blew the book up. I could read a 500-page book, but my preference would have been to watch the 6-part mini-series. If he led with that, that would have been perhaps more advantageous. So the question we've asked in there, and obviously what we're hitting on now, this is what we call a punctuated innovation moment, right? This is a moment where the technology allows us to do things like fire or the printing press or the internet or mobile phone, allows us to break down and solve problems unsolvable before. So if we look at the first one, right? So I'm sure we've seen lots of these type courses. I'm sure we've had to go through lots of these courses, and I'm sure many people, apart from maybe Ritu, probably hates this type of course and stuff as well. But it is single modality, and some people are going to say that's okay. But we've already hit on the part that lots of people are probably going to say that's not okay. So if we look at, I guess, AI, if we see AI as just a simple way, and this is stolen from Charles Jennings, who stole it from Henry Ford, who may or may not have said it in the first place. But the point of, if we simply see AI as a way to accelerate the creation of this, we're probably missing the opportunity. So the opportunity, let's just say the first step, if we take one of the popcorn videos or a Fuse video, I want to balance it out there, right? If we take, let's say, a video from a platform, put it into our platform, for example, it automatically creates 5 modalities of learning which a person can choose to learn in the way they want to learn. So what I mean by that is the video will automatically use one type of AI to transcribe that to text, which means you've got the ability to watch it with subtitles, to watch it with a transcript, to read it, but you've also got the transcript and that text as a resource to use in multiple ways automatically by other AIs, which means you can translate it easily using AI as well. That by default, you've also automatically got that social part, so I can chat with the author. I've got social interactions now on a global scale to chat with that. I've got the ability to watch and listen naturally from a video, watch, listen, or read now. And now with the AI, which we'll come on to, I've also got the ability to ask questions of it and not have to bug, let's say, Ryan the whole time. So if I can't, I can now talk and have a conversation with that body of knowledge, interactive conversation, or I can go back and actually chat to Ryan to say, I didn't quite get all the information from the 10 videos of your knowledge, so now I want to talk to some humans and talk through that. So yeah, just showing that's Let's just show a little example of that. So for example, if I typed in, let's go with the most important thing today, how do I make a mojito? So again, what this will do is it will try to figure out, am I looking like Google is? Am I looking for a video, a file, a resource, or so forth from it? Probably need to press the return button. And it will attempt to obviously try and find the resource. If it can't find the resource, it's trying to use my mobile phone, so it may not be able to get out. Let's see if that comes back. I think it's like, oh no, here we go. It's getting there, but getting there slowly. Yeah, 3G in a conference, probably not the best way to do a live demo, but we got there. So what it would do is, it's there, it said, is there knowledge in the video? Do you want to watch it? If I just typed in, making mojito, it would have given us a YouTube experience of finding it, which was saying, YouTube's a nice way of doing it. Other times I want that ChatGPT style experience that says, well actually, just give me the steps, like Ritu wants, and she gets the steps to what she wants, so great for her type of personality. Obviously, if I want to go deeper, and I then want to ask, what's the best type of rum to use? It's going to look at the body of knowledge of that expert that's going to say, I recommend Bacardi rum that goes with that. So automatically, there's no admin, no setup, no configuration to create 5 modalities of learning, but we're only having to create it once. So no extra work to now start solving that problem of cost to build multimodality. Let's go back. And just taking it a step further, this is still a journey which we're all accelerating on. This is another bit of AI, which again, from that body of knowledge, that video, we can now press another button, and it actually makes, I don't know, but maybe let's give it a go, makes an interactive podcast between 2 people chatting.
All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into digital learning, and more specifically, how to make it work.
This makes you wonder how...
So that's a dynamic AI, literally press a button and it creates a podcast between what sounds like two podcasters having a conversation from that body of knowledge that we've captured. So we captured through a range of videos, able to watch, read, listen, social, AI conversations, and then create that, or maybe even this one, which is automatic creating TikTok videos for the generation that wants to have it in 30 seconds and search for that stuff as well. But again, all just clicks of a button rather than having to think about how do I create 5 or 6 or 7 different types of modality from that. So that's one type of personalization, right? Is the modality learning and the aspects of talking. Again, I think over time, we will continue to get deeper in some of this, right? So for example, that storytelling bit versus just the facts bit, the reading age bit, the role you've got, all of those are just information we can insert to allow that personalization to happen as we keep taking these steps forward to understand it. So let's talk about the second type of personalization. So personalization based on moment of need. So moment of need for those that are, so moment of need is a framework that made famous by Bob Mosher, for those may or may not be familiar with it, very similar to 70-20-10. So a modern framework that in its heart says learning shouldn't just be about a course, it's about doing something in a much broader way. So for those refreshing it, it's about new stuff. How do you learn new stuff? How do you learn more about that? How do you learn stuff when changes? And then when you've got a problem, how do you solve it and apply it? So again, we start mapping technology towards that and then breaking this down into, again, how do we create content once and automatically make those 5 moments available in one go, versus the problem we had before, it was just quite hard to actually create the knowledge for the problem and solve bit, the 70% bit, as well as the other bits. So inside here, this bit we've all got, right? Everyone knows how to create the structured career path, basic learning, right? A billion companies out there that does that. Second one is this concept we'll dig into. So the more or the ongoing knowledge, because every role, especially in most industries, it's changing rapidly, right? Processes change, products change, and how do you stay up to date in an easy way, and how do you track that and help people do that? Obviously, we want people to learn through curiosity, and obviously we want to help them solve and actually solve problems when they don't know, how do I do something? Which mint do I choose? Which vodka do I choose? There's critical choices in life. There's big questions. So anything we want to do inside that, how do we get that information at point of need without having to spend loads of time creating performance support materials? I just want to throw my manuals up, throw my training manuals up, courses, and it automates all those moment of needs. Cool so far? Got some nods, that's good. So hitting on that, so moving away from that formal course, so the second concept here is a never-ending learning plan. It sounds scary, but it's also quite cool, right? So many of our clients, what they do, they have this concept of a never-ending learning plan that in essence basically says on Monday, you're 100% completed. It sits on the front page always of it, and it's particular to their job role. So in retail, hospitality, wherever you want. And then that never-ending learning plan, on the Wednesday, 2 more bits of knowledge comes up, a process update, product update, new launch towards it. So 2 bits of content go into that content structure, and then it automatically saves you down at 90%. At the same time, if they bump into that bit of content somewhere else, so informally, they're seeing it in a feed, it will automatically say, I know you've watched that already, so I'm going to move that up or down, depending on what you've done elsewhere. If that bit of content is another course somewhere, it's going to know that and it's going to automatically update that. But at least in their role, everyone knows there's one thing I've got to do every day that's up to date in my job. And therefore, it makes logical sense, right? It makes logical sense that the people that are going there more regularly, en masse, are more likely to be able to perform better than the people that are not up to date. So a very logical part towards that. So just again, this is just an example of an interface. The interface could be in multiple ways. So you kind of got the concept of the recommendations, the feed, which is the informal way of bumping into knowledge. That's relevant for you and your job. But if you don't get it, then we're going to capture it here. And then obviously your structured learning that goes with that. Just showing some of the functionality in one type of interface. And obviously the big problem solve thing at the top, which is really about search. So hitting on the third bit, that problem and solve piece, right? That's the bit that's been hard to do at scale. The concept is 70-20-10. Or the problem solve has been great, but the cost of actually making, normally you've got to remake your content in a special format to work in a special performance support tool. So now what we're basically saying is that part is fully automated, and using obviously the technology, the same technology of the internet. So for those not completely familiar with what ChatGPT or Gemini does, just 30 seconds on it. So what it does, it goes and crawls the internet, Wikipedia, your websites, our website, crawls all that stuff, makes a copy of that text and puts that into a new database called a vector database, which is more relationship orientated than it is just like keywords. And then that's what we are then interface with it to talk to in natural language. So that's what the public version does. And then obviously what we're now seeing is platforms like us basically take that technology and make private databases of that for each client. So each client has a private instance of their data, their content that's indexed in exactly the same way, which is where we're now able to then have the same level of functionality, while we're able to ask questions, we're able to have conversations, we're able to automatically translate stuff. All this stuff is available because we're using exactly the same technology, but in a private, safe type way towards it. If then we say, okay, so how does that start to manifest itself? So one part on that problem solve, 70% part, is basically copying Google. So when you ask a question in Google, it knows, am I looking for a video, a file, or asking a question? So in essence, we do the same thing, and you saw that on the part that when I asked for a mojito, it then flicked automatically between I'm trying to find a video to actually I'm trying to find an answer. And then the answer bit then moves into, and the question bit, the content bit, again, what we did, we re-architected the platform to put search at the heart of it, hearing that most people saying, if I've got content on our platform, and maybe another LMS, maybe LinkedIn and so forth, how do you make it super easy that people believe they can go to one place and find it? So before you get to the AI answers, you're just getting to a place where you want to try and make it super easy to get there, which we're getting to a little bit of how that's now possible. So then we're automatically switching, which is what we just showed, and that's allowing us to automate that performance support. So you put a 400-page training manual in, anyone can in essence ask a question of that 400-page training manual without having to actually re-architect it, re-index it in any type way. And obviously you've got that same ability to then ask follow-up questions of that manual, of that knowledge, and whether that's tacit knowledge or explicit knowledge, whether that's the knowledge of the people's heads how to make mojitos, or whether that's documents and files that are our processes. So it's the coming together of tacit and explicit knowledge into one place. So maybe that covers off the moments of need level of personalization. So we covered modalities, how we're doing with that, and now we've covered off a little bit around the moment of need bit. So then to your bit, which is, and again, I want to go into 2 bits, but I want to hit the problem first, right? So what is the problem for language? And I think actually Sophie Vergara from Modern Family explains it perfectly. Hopefully some sound here.
It's not mine. Do you know how frustrating it is to have to translate everything in my head before I say it? To have people laugh in my face because I'm struggling to find the words? You should try talking in my shoes from 1 mile.
I think you will.
I know what I meant to mean. Do you even know how smart I am in Spanish? Of course you don't.
And I think that's the point. Do you know how smart I am in Spanish? And we know this from research, right? When we took some of our content, our Few School content, and into India, and we got kids to try to learn maths with someone with a London accent. Then we got someone to learn maths with someone with a local Bombay accent. And then we got someone to learn in Hindi. Not shocking, right? The people that didn't understand the London accent didn't understand the maths. even though they spoke English, they didn't understand the English that was being said. The brain cognitively was doing too much work to translate it. In a local accent, they understood the English, but they didn't understand the maths, because the brain is still working hard at trying to translate that to local language, as Sofia Vergara is. Those that explained it in Hindi got the maths first time. So our problem is, how do you scale that, right? We know there's a problem forever, and the problem has been scalability and cost for it. So again, with AI and with technology, so we've had in the platform for a while the ability to translate text and transcripts and all that exciting stuff for a while. And then if I just go to the next, just switch to here and go back to here. So now, so one of the things we've done is basically put 6 or 7 different AIs together that in one button allows the automatic translation of content, for example, from one language to another, not just the text but the audio. So if you've got 2 people talking, not sure this is, let's see if it's buffered in okay.
So subcontractors are external businesses.
So that's just her, and literally in one button now, and normally I do this at a conference and actually show it live working. Just ran out of time a bit right now.
Los subcontratistas son empresas externas, marcas.
So basically now what our clients are doing now is literally giving us 10 videos, 20 videos, your popcorn stuff, press a button, and then it's in 10 languages within a couple of hours with nothing. So automatically what's happened behind the scenes is it's gone from one type of AI that's transcribed the voice to text, another best-in-class AI that's then translated the text to text, another AI that's then used voice AI to then put the AI back again, and then also the AI then stitching it all back together again with the multiple streams of audio to the video. All we know is just pressing a button and it automatically happens. So hopefully that gives some feedback towards the in the translation bit. So text translation has been there for a while. Interface translation also important, but obviously I think the last mile. So for me, for Fuse School, having 1,000 videos that I'm now able to have those in every language at click of a button in almost in a cost that's extremely affordable, right? Means we've cracked another big barrier around personalization. And Sofia Vergara could learn anything in any language at the same speed, and that's about inclusivity, right? You're giving everyone the equal opportunity to learn in accordance to actually how their brains are wired, including the language part towards it. So a massive, massive increase, not just in personalization, but in inclusivity. Just the last one we're hit on is just around the curation part towards it, right? How do we automatically create stuff? And again, we look at not necessarily frontline, but head office. We do have a challenge, right, where there are normally loads of content, loads of courses, hundreds of roles, thousands of roles, and lots of skills and skills gaps inside it. So the problem that you mentioned inside there. And also one of the big problems that's not talked about is people got different taxonomies. So LinkedIn might call a course something around integrity, whereas Harvard something might call it morality. So there's not a common taxonomy that the industry uses in order to understand content. And if it doesn't understand all the different content from all the different platforms, how's it going to make a smart recommendation on a skills gap? So that's a known issue that the industry tends to keep a little quiet about. The way that we solve that is, doesn't matter where the content is, whether we link out to Udemy or LinkedIn or Coursera through our deep connectors, or you're using authoring tools like Easy Generator, or you're using agencies like us or Popcorn. Get lots of little things today. Remember me. And the fourth is whether it's user-generated content. So wherever it happens to be, what the platform then does, it automatically retags that against the company's preferred skills taxonomy. So everything is now in the same language. So a skills gap recommendation is going to be able to say, I could bring in content for any of those sources through the smart index in the middle. So in essence, the skills gapping piece, which is the big thing, saying I've got a skills gap in maybe active listening, in speaking at 140 words a minute rather than 200. So those are skills gaps, and wherever that content is, it's going to recommend that to me, independent of that tagging system the other systems have. So to automatically create the skills gaps, to recognize the skills gaps I have in my job role, and to automatically bring that back. I think we've just got a few minutes left, right? So I think the last thing I just want to maybe touch on, right, is we mentioned this earlier on. We all do use in different ways. Our preferences are ChatGPT, Google, YouTube, etc. to go learn. So maybe just touch the last bit on UX. So what's really interesting, again, what we're just launching next month is the UX, right? And the reason for that is if you look at most platforms today, consumer platforms you've chosen, they actually all use a common user interface. It's actually UI designed by Google, apart from Apple, called MUI. So material user interface. So YouTube uses it, Spotify uses it, Netflix uses it, and so forth. And you probably recognize that from the menu on the left-hand side, which allows you, how do I get to the big things? How do I get back to stuff? How do I find stuff? So that's a common interface that now is used, and that's why that we've then taken that, because it's the same thing. You want to leverage and stand on the giants of the behaviors have already been changed by those manufacturers. So rather than have to try to train people to use an interface and learn how to learn, we've already said we already know how to learn because we're using those interfaces. So again, from a personality and a personalization part, it's given the ability to have a UX we consider, and the second then is also recognize we want to personalize by role. So not every single role probably wants to have the same homepage. Leadership versus management versus frontline versus head office versus developers, probably different interface, and therefore to be able to have the flexibility to have a common UI and UX, but a personalized experience by role seems to make a lot of sense towards there. I think that was it. I think in 28 minutes I did the 45 minutes of slides that I had, and I tried to talk slower, but suffered, and you guys didn't stop me. We agreed that you were going to tell me to go slow. But you can watch the recording at half speed though. The technology does that now, right? 0.75. And that is interesting. The last bit of personalization, my brain talking naturally is working at 220, 240 words a minute. Normal speak is 140 words. So from an individual perspective, I always put a video 1.5. That's a personalization choice. Most people put me at 0.75. That's a personalization choice, but it's another aspect of personalization to think through. So before we wrap up, so any questions anyone wants to ask, any clarification questions, big questions, little questions? Don't shout all at one time, just one at a time. All right, good. Well, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for listening. If you want to come see us, I think we're on a stand that's not mentioned here at the back there. But I hope you enjoyed it. I think was it D20, D120? It's at the back there, pink stand. Can't miss it. Thanks so much, guys, and see you next time, huh?